HOA goons surrounded my cabin. They had no idea I'm the new county sheriff. I'd never wanted to wear the badge again. After 12 years with the sheriff's department, most of it dealing with cartel threats, domestic disputes, and meth head shootouts in desert trailer parks, I'd hung it up, bought 40 acres of peace up in the backwoods of Colorado, and promised myself I'd never touch a siren or radio again. But when I saw three strange men in neon orange HOA security vests stomping across my fence line, chainsaws in hand, I knew peace was done. They didn't see me at first. I'd been in the stable, brushing down my old mare, dusty. I caught the noise metal scraping wood, a dull engine whine, and walked around the side of the barn just in time to see the first post fall. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" I shouted. The biggest of the three turned, chewing gum like it owed him rent, clearing unauthorized fencing. "This land's been reclaimed by the Oaks Valley HOA. You'll get a notice in the mail." Reclaimed, I blinked. "This isn't even in Oaks Valley. I'm 3 miles outside their jurisdiction." He smirked. "We extended it. Karen said this parcel was always supposed to be part of the community." Karen. I'd met her once, a brittle, sun hat-wearing woman who looked like she drank Chardonnay for breakfast and judged neighbors for composting wrong. I'd run into her at a farmer's market where she lectured an old man for selling honey without HOA approval. She'd somehow gotten herself elected president for life of the fake HOA that was plaguing the outskirts of the valley. "You tell Karen this is private land," I said. "Back off." Now, they didn't. The bolt cutters came out. One of them kicked over a feed trough. Dusty snorted loud behind me. Even she sensed the shift in energy. I stepped forward, heart pounding, blood humming in my ears. I reached into my jacket and flashed my badge. The gold star glinted in the afternoon sun. "Name's Cole Whitaker. Interim county sheriff as of 2 weeks ago." The chewing stopped. The bolt cutters dropped. But that was only the beginning. I should have known flashing the badge wouldn't be the end of it. The three men backed off that afternoon, boots crunching through gravel like they still owned the place. The guy with the bolt cutters muttered something under his breath about just following orders before trudging off with the other two. But I saw it in their eyes this wasn't over. I sent a message that evening to Deputy Lynn over at the county office. She was the one who convinced me to take the interim sheriff position after old Sheriff Turner retired early stage 4 lung cancer. Lynn and I had served on the same task force during the Norwood raids, and I trusted her like family. Me got fake HOA enforcers cutting my fence today. 3 males, mid-30s, neon vests, no IDs. Lynn again. "That's the 3rd report this month. Karen's at it full force. Want me to pull her expansion docs? Me hell yes. And if she doesn't have them, we press charges." The next morning, I drove my Dodge Ram down to the county recorder's office with a pit in my stomach and a steel resolve in my chest. That fake HOA had been creeping into ranch lands for years, mostly bullying elderly landowners who didn't have the money or the fight to push back. But now they'd walked into my jurisdiction. They just didn't know it yet. Inside the record room, Lynn was waiting with a thick file folder. She slammed it on the counter like a blackjack hand. Everything Karen submitted in the last 18 months, I opened it. It was a circus of forged maps, half-signed permits, and something so absurd I had to reread it, a scanned napkin labeled expansion approval. Meeting notes with a crayon drawing of new borders and a little cartoon horse with an X over it. "You gotta be kidding me," I muttered. "She's been claiming community intentions are valid legal doctrine. She's gonna learn real quick they ain't." That night, I got a call from my neighbor, Tom Miller, ex-railroad worker, and the kind of guy who could build a working windmill out of spare parts and a broken lawn chair. "They came to my place tonight," he said, voice shaking. "Said I had to tear down my chicken coop or face fines." "What fines?" "HOA fines. Told me Karen signed the property into the eco zone and that coops were no longer compliant." I gripped the phone tight. "Stay inside." "Tom, I'm on it." By the end of the week, I'd tallied 6 more complaints. Elderly folks, single moms, a disabled vet named Earl, who they tried to fine for flying a flag, and all of it tied back to Karen McAllister and her self-declared HOA thugs. They'd created their own security team, a group of former gym bouncers and failed bounty hunters who patrolled like they were the National Guard. No real IDs, just muscle and fake citations. I started gathering statements, knocking on doors, building a case. But the more I dug, the more I realized this wasn't just about ego or power. Karen had a plan. I found it one rainy afternoon, buried in a stack of property transactions. Two shell companies, Silver Pines Development Group and KV Holdings LLC, were quietly buying up lots just outside Oaks Valley. Both traced back to Karen, one under her daughter's name, the other tied to her former HOA treasurer who resigned for health reasons. And then it hit me. She wasn't expanding the HOA for control. She was flipping land. She was forcing people out, fencing in properties, sabotaging infrastructure, slapping them with made-up violations until they caved and sold cheap. Then she'd sweep in through her LLCs and snatch up the land for pennies. And build, the big kind of build, luxury condos, a golf course, maybe even a shopping plaza. It wasn't just illegal, it was calculated. And now, personal. The final straw came on a Thursday morning when I drove back from court and saw my barn door ripped open. Dusty's stall had been vandalized, the feed bags slashed, hay scattered. My backup generator was gone. A handwritten note lay on my workbench. Sheriff or not, you're trespassing on HOA land. Get out or we'll escalate. OV Sec Oaks Valley, HOA Security Enforcement Council. That wasn't a thing. But now, this wasn't just a land dispute. They'd come after my home. And I don't care who you are when someone violates your land, your animal, and your right to peace. You don't just file paperwork, you prepare. That night, I put on the uniform, not the standard issue, the one I kept from my old days, the black tactical vest with my name stitched over the heart, sheriff's star on one side, badge on the belt. I loaded my dash cam, charged the radio, and checked the batteries on every trail cam around my land. Then I made a few calls to the vet who got fined for his flag, to Tom Miller, to Deputy Lynn, to two ranchers who'd been slapped with noise complaints for rooster crows. You still got those trail cameras, I asked them, and your old CB radios. Damn right, said Tom. Good, I said. We're setting a trap. The night the trap was set, the air hung thick like something alive was watching. I didn't sleep. None of us did. Tom Miller had installed two motion sensor lights on his chicken coop, aimed directly at the path where the HOA thugs had trespassed. Earl, the disabled veteran who once trained K-9 units, lent me his old tactical drone, complete with night vision. And I'd posted a county notice outside my barn declaring it a restricted investigation zone under my authority. I knew they'd come. Bullies always return when they think you're backing down. But this time, I had eyes everywhere, cams, radio lines, and men who were just as tired of being pushed as I was. 11:42 p.m. The first alert came in. Motion detected south fence line. I grabbed the radio. Eyes up. South tree line. 3 hostiles. Moving fast. Tom's voice crackled in. I see 'em. All black. Carrying bolt cutters. Lynn was 30 minutes out with backup, but I wasn't waiting. I jumped into my truck, fired it up, and killed the lights. I coasted down the dirt path to the back pasture and parked behind the rise. Then I walked, boots silent in the grass, breath steady. They were already cutting through the reinforced fencing I'd installed the day before. You boys really should have brought a warrant, I said, stepping out from behind a tree, flashlight aimed right at their faces. They froze like deer. One dropped the bolt cutters. The leader, the gum chewer from before, tried to recover. This is HOA enforcement. You're interfering with jurisdictional code. I lifted my badge with one hand and the drone footage feed with the other. You're on county land. Interfering with livestock, trespassing after dark, vandalism, and impersonating a municipal officer. He took a step back. You can't just, I can. I'm the law out here, And right then, Lynn's cruiser lights came over the ridge behind me. One, then two, then three. Backup had arrived. We arrested all three of them that night, cuffed, processed, booked. The DA didn't even hesitate to press charges once he saw the drone footage and read the fake HOA credentials. But the real battle hadn't started yet. The next morning, Karen McAllister stood in front of a full HOA town hall, white blazer, clipboard, sunglasses pushed up on her head like a queen surveying peasants. The sheriff, she said, has overstepped his boundaries. This land belongs to the community. We've built something here, and we won't be intimidated by Karen, I said, stepping into the hall. Sit down. The entire room gasped. You don't have jurisdiction here. You don't have permits, and you sure as hell don't have the right to sell people's land out from under them. She stiffened. I represent Oaks Valley. No, I said. You represent Silver Pines Development Group and KV Holdings LLC, and I've got the title transfers to prove it. You've been coercing people to sell, threatening, intimidating, even vandalizing, all so you could flip the land for profit. She smiled coldly. Those accusations are baseless. I pulled out a file, stamped with the county seal. Then you won't mind if we go over the evidence in court? Gasps rippled through the crowd. Karen's expression cracked for just a second before she stormed out of the room. We raided her offices the next day. Lynn and I, alongside 4 deputies, armed with warrants signed by Judge Moreno. Inside, we found what we expected: ledgers, maps, schematics of a luxury development project called the Oaks Renaissance, emails between Karen and investors in Denver, recordings of phone calls where she laughed about scaring the rednecks off their little farms. It was everything we needed. That evening, the story hit local news. Sheriff exposes fake HOA land scheme. Karen McAllister under investigation for fraud, coercion, and real estate misconduct. And people, they were angry. Not just the ranchers, not just the elderly. The entire valley turned. Protest signs went up. HOA signs came down. Homeowners demanded open books, fair elections, and real representation. Karen, she was summoned to testify before a grand jury, but she never showed. She ran. The last we heard, she was in Arizona hiding in some gated community she didn't have the power to ruin. But she'd left behind a crater of mistrust, lawsuits, and fractured neighborly ties. Still, something had changed. The same people who once waved from across the road but kept their heads down now stood up. They built new fences. They planted new gardens. They talked again, not just about HOA bylaws, but about boundaries, respect, and justice. And as for me, I didn't quit being sheriff. Not yet. After Karen vanished, Oaks Valley fractured like a cracked windshield. The residents were split between those who cheered her downfall and those too embarrassed to admit they'd followed her in the first place. And that shame, it turned bitter real fast. I got threats, anonymous letters taped to my mailbox at midnight, 2 tires slashed outside the station. One morning, someone left a bag of dead fish at the foot of my driveway with a note that read, "Badge won't save you when the neighborhood burns." Deputy Lynn traced the letters back to a man named Wade Tillman, a former HOA board member, and Karen's bulldog. Turns out Wade had been her fixer, the guy who handled residents who got out of line. We brought him in, but the man wouldn't crack. Claimed he had nothing to do with the extortion, the threats, or the missing funds from the HOA's bank account. He played dumb like it was a second language, until he found out Karen was planning to pin everything on him. 3 days after Wade's arrest, I got a call at 1:14 a.m. Fire at the Miller property. Tom's chicken coop gone, burned to ash. His well pump melted. Half his fence line torched black. If his son hadn't heard the crackling and gotten them out, someone could have died. And right there in the soot-covered mud were boot prints. I stood next to Tom in the still smoking rubble, flashlight beams shaking slightly in my grip. "This ain't just retaliation," he said. "This is war." I didn't argue. I was thinking the same damn thing. I called an emergency community meeting the next night. Not in the HOA hall, we held it outside the church under the stars, with lanterns, blankets, and a fire barrel for warmth. Dozens showed, some curious, some angry, all scared. I stood in the center and cleared my throat. You've all seen what's happening. What's been happening? This isn't about fences or noise complaints anymore. This is about control. This is about a group of people who thought they could use fear to steal what generations built here. A woman named Marie, early 50s, floral apron over her coat, raised her hand. What do we do now? How do we stop them together? I said. We stop them together. I laid it out: a community patrol schedule, anonymous tip line, and a volunteer fund to rebuild what was lost. Lynn handed out contact forms. Earl offered to host training on situational awareness. Even the cranky widower who once yelled at my dog offered to donate plywood. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. Then the news came. Karen had been caught. She'd tried to buy a $1.2 million home outside Scottsdale under a fake identity, Margaret D. Holloway, using stolen HOA funds routed through her shell companies. The feds found her hiding behind a gated community's pool house, half drunk and sobbing into a cucumber martini. She was extradited back to Colorado under federal custody, and when she stepped off that plane in cuffs, every camera in the state was waiting. Her mugshot hit the internet faster than lightning. That night, I poured myself a whiskey and sat on my porch in silence, Dusty grazing nearby, the wind finally still. We'd won. Right, but justice is rarely clean. A few weeks later, I got a letter from the state board request for review of county oversight in HOA conflict escalation. Turns out some of Karen's cronies had pulled strings with the state to investigate me for overreach, bias, and excessive enforcement. One board member even asked why a sheriff was getting involved in petty zoning disputes. I damn near tore the letter in half, but Lynn stopped me. This is what happens when you threaten power, she said. They throw paperwork until you drown in it. And I realized this was the real fight. Karen was just the spark, the system she exploited. That was the fire. Over the next month, I spent every hour not on patrol testifying before review boards, filing evidence chains, and defending every action I'd taken to protect the people out here. They tried to wear me down, but I'd been shot at in Juarez, held hostage in Durango, and once tackled a coyote with my bare hands to save a toddler. I wasn't going anywhere, and neither were my people. Tom rebuilt his coop. Marie opened a local fund for victims of HOA harassment. Earl started hosting barbecues again, flag waving strong above his porch. We weren't broken. We were pissed and united. The courthouse was packed the day Karen McAllister finally stood trial. Reporters lined the steps. Local ranchers sat shoulder to shoulder with HOA defectors, and a row of her former board members tried not to make eye contact with anyone. But I made sure to sit front row, uniform pressed, badge polished, eyes locked dead ahead. Karen looked smaller than I remembered. Gone was the crisp white blazer, the smug expression, the expensive sunglasses perched like a crown. What stood in their place was a tired, pale woman in an orange jumpsuit and shackled wrists, trying to look pitiful. But the people in that room hadn't forgotten. Judge Moreno let the prosecution rip. Wire fraud, coercion, threats, forgery, impersonation of public officials, conspiracy to defraud a municipality. The list went on. They showed videos of her security patrols threatening seniors, emails proving she'd offered cash bonuses for each property recovered, and phone records where she'd literally said, "I don't care who lives there, scare them if you have to." Then came the defense. Miss McAllister, her lawyer argued, simply wanted to restore order to a growing community. She filled a leadership void and created structure where there was chaos. The crowd nearly laughed, but the judge didn't. He stared at her a long time before he spoke. Order built on fear is not leadership, it's control. And what you built, Miss McAllister, was not a community, it was a con. She was sentenced to 18 years federal, no parole for the first 12. Her assets were frozen, her shell companies dismantled, and most of the stolen HOA funds, nearly $2.7 million, were ordered to be repaid to victims through restitution over time. Some said it wasn't enough. Maybe it wasn't, but the symbolic weight that was worth more than dollars. A month later, the county hosted the first community land and freedom fair on the very field Karen once tried to bulldoze. No booths, no politics, just people. We grilled food, played old Johnny Cash tracks through Tom's busted speakers, and watched kids paint a mural on a barn wall that read, "This land is ours." Deputy Lynn and I stood off to the side near the truck, coffee in hand, watching Earl teach some teens how to change a tire using an old Ford axle. "You staying in the job?" she asked. I exhaled. I was done with this life. Thought I could hide up here and let the world burn somewhere else. But now she smirked. "Now you're the spark." Later that night, I sat on my porch again. Same place I'd been when this all began. Dusty nearby, wind rustling the trees, stars wide open above. This land wasn't just dirt. It held sweat, stories, families, freedom. Karen tried to turn it into a product, a profit margin, but we turned it into a stand. And something bigger happened after that. People started asking questions, not just here, but in nearby counties too. Other fake HOAs, copycats, silent scams they started unraveling. Folks showed up at town halls, demanding transparency. They knocked down old fences, both literal and emotional, and it all started here, with a fence and a badge. What makes a community real rules or respect? Have you ever seen power abused in your neighborhood? Share your thoughts below. Let's talk justice, community, and standing your ground together.